Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Steven Steers here, and I've returned with grad prep. Last session, we covered the 3 questions you need to get to a customer. 3 questions, right? So the first question was, what problem do you solve? The second question, who do you solve the problem for, or whom, depending on how you want to approach that grammatically. And then finally, why is now the time? So we know what problem we solve, we know who we solve the problem for, and then finally we use one of the magnificent 7 reasons to help understand why the person would potentially buy anything from us. But what I conveniently left out from the format is a lot of other stuff. So that's some of the stuff we're going to cover today. So what I want to do firstly is give you a quick breakdown of what we're going to start covering and how that's going to relate to you creating a company. But before I do that, I want to talk to you about leg day. Back when I was in college, I went to Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I was a recruited walk-on for the track and field team, where I did the high jump, or I attempted to do the high jump. And the reason I used the word attempted is because while I was a great athlete in college, I had massive jumping ability. I actually hit my head on the rim of the basketball hoop one time and had a cut on my head, which is amazing to be able to say. I could jump really high, but I was raw athletically. And when I got to college in the Division I setting, there were literal mutants and Olympians, literal Olympians on my track and field team. And I quickly learned when I went to these track meets that I didn't cut the mustard. I didn't have what it took to really compete at the highest level, world-class level. But I still said, hey, I'm gonna go for the challenge and I'm up to it. So one of the things that they had me do every single day was work on my legs. Leg day is one of the things most people forget about in business and in the gym, right? If we're thinking about the gym, squatting is hard. It is heavy weight and you're sore and you're tired and it just doesn't feel good until it starts feeling great. But squats, if done properly with the right form, build up your core and your foundation for what's important in your body, obviously, right? Being able to stand firm, tall, confident, good posture, good core strength. But it's the same thing in your business. Squats are massively important in your business. So let's talk about squats right now. So I'm going to write the word squat out for you. S-Q-A-T. All right, so what we've already covered is the Q part. So in the first session, you saw questions. So we know which 3 questions we need to ask before we can get to our next customer. What we haven't covered, which we'll cover a little bit today, is the rest of it. We're going to cover strategy. So strategy, sorry if you can't read that R. Strategy, questions, actions, and tactics. So actions and tactics will be covered at a later date, but today we're going to talk about squats. And we're going to talk specifically about strategy. And where I want to take strategy to is the next place, which is SWOT. So I want you to SWOT your squats. SWOT your squats. Okay, so you may have heard of a SWOT analysis, right? If we're going to start with a strategy for anything, we first need to know our strengths as an individual, right? If you're an entrepreneur, a first-time entrepreneur, and you've never sold anything to anyone, let's think about, what are you good at? What is one of the things you are better than most people in your classes at? Like, are you a better athlete? Are you a better writer? Do you read at a quicker pace? I can't tell you what that is, but you know what it is. You know that first thing that came out in your heart once I said that to you. You know that thing that's a big strength for you. Everyone's complimented you on it, and people continually come to you to ask for advice on that thing. And maybe when you applied to college or to grad school, that was a thing that you highlighted in your application. This is a strength. Let's highlight your strengths. So know what your strengths are. So I'm going to erase the board. I'm going to write that down. But remember, SWOT your squats. So we're going to cover the strategy portion today about swatting your squats. So let's cover it. So SWOT stands for S is strengths. So as we mentioned, what are you really good at, right? Conversely, in the market you want to serve, what strengths does the market have? Get a piece of paper and write down what you're really good at. And then next to it, write down what's really good in the market that you potentially want to serve that meshes with the strengths that you actually have. The next is a W. Doesn't stand for win, though if you do this right, you can win. W stands for weaknesses. I don't remember who told me this, but one of the strongest things you can acknowledge is your weaknesses. So to show true strength is to acknowledge where you do not have strength. That is the power of vulnerability. But for our instances today, weaknesses are things that you are potentially not as good at, which is important to label. It shows confidence. Here's why. In a company, there's going to be certain functions of your company as you build it and as it grows and becomes this actual entity that helps people. There's tasks that you're just not as well suited to do in the business. And I want to clarify something for you. Lots and lots of entrepreneurs take a certain point of pride, a misplaced point of pride, in doing all the work themselves. People will tell you, man, I did that all. I built the whole thing myself, man. I worked and I stayed up for 18 hours a day for 6 to 10 months. Like, okay, you can do that if you want. You're going to get burnt out. You're going to get burnt out. But really building an actual business that grows and helps people and allows you to maybe, sleep at night and feel excited about what you're doing and show up well for your customers involves knowing what you're not good at just as much as it requires you to know what you are good at. So on that same sheet of paper, label your weaknesses. Where are you not as strong? Are you not as strong at sales and business development? Are you potentially not as good at building product or coding? Or are you better at raising money or building conversations and networking? These are all things that you should know clearly where you stand as a human being for what you are best at and where you would like to spend the most time. All the places that you don't like to spend time but are necessary parts of your business, this is going to affect the way that you plan your strategy to sell and grow your business. So we need to know these things to start out. So label your weaknesses. Then on the other side, what does the market have in the weakness category? Where are they not strong and not cutting the mustard for the things that they want? Understand that, write that down. This dovetails nicely into the next place, which is the O of SWOT, which is opportunities. I'm gonna cut that short as an ops just to save myself a little bit of writing. As you can tell, my writing is like a doctor. That's what my grandmother would say. You'd make a great doctor. The reason for that is if you ever look at a prescription pad from a doctor, you can't read a single word. And my grandma's like, you'd be perfect at doing that. But that's my story. Anyway, so opportunities. So once you've identified your strengths as a person, an individual, a contributor, and those that are in the market as well, and then you analyze what the weaknesses are for you as a person and within the market, now what we discover are opportunities. Opportunities, we discover the space between the notes, the beautiful space between the notes. And from there, we can start to make a list of what we see as potential opportunities where we can fit in with our strengths into the places where they are weak and places where we need to potentially avoid, which gets us to the next part, the T, the dreaded T, which stands for threats. If I can spell today, I'm gonna get my trusty eraser. See, this is the thing. It's like entrepreneurship. You can erase sometimes. You can start right over. Don't ever be afraid to start over. So threats. Okay, these are threats to the market or to your business or what your competitors are potentially doing. These are incredible things to understand and write down and notate on paper. And if you notate them, now you have a star that you're pointing towards. You have a proper direction. So we've swatted our SQAT, right? So SWAT your SQAT. So we looked at our strengths, our weaknesses, opportunities in the market, and we've looked at possible threats, both for ourselves and for our market, which starts to get us into the strategy portion of our SQAT frame, which remember squats are Foundational, right? It's to get your core and your strength up so you can stand properly with confidence about your business. That's strategy, questions, actions, and tactics. So let's get a little bit further into the strategy part of things. So what is a good strategy? You're going to have a lot of people and a lot of books you can read on this. But here's what I think, and here's what I'm going to share with you. A really simple way that you can actually start to develop some way. So I call this the mapping method. So if you've ever used a small tool by a tiny, tiny company called Google Maps, you'll know that there are 2 bits of information that you need to go any place you want in the entire world, no matter where it is. The first is your starting point, right? So start. The next is where you want to end up, right? It can be around the corner. It could be in Thailand, in which case there's going to be a lot of parts and pieces to happen depending on where you want to go and what the travel restrictions may or may not be like. That space between start and end, I'm going to draw another end here. That space is the gap for your services, for your product. So what we need to understand is the starting point for the people we want to work with, right? That's the development of a good strategy. And before that, we actually need to understand our starting point. So where are we, right? You're starting this business, you have this great idea. You maybe want to raise funds. You want to make a huge impact in the world. Well, congratulations, that's awesome. But we need to label that. We need to be clear about our own starting point. Before we can help anybody end up where they want to go, we need to know where we want to go. So a good strategy starts with knowing why you want to achieve a certain thing. So firstly, on that same sheet of paper you are taking notes on and doing your SWOT for your squats, I want you to write down a starting point, where you are right now. So that could be a recent graduate. That could be a recent ex-employee of a huge Fortune 500 company. Whatever that is, write that down for where you are right now, and then get clear about where you want to go, let's say in 12 months and 3 years. I like those numbers because 12 months is a short enough amount of time to where you could actually think about it really quickly. And then 3 years is enough time to properly have coalesced those changes and gotten to a different place in your life as well. So just make a quick note. Where are you now and where do you want to go? And that gap is how we're going to build you a strategy to get you to that place. Remember, if we have an end point and we have a starting point, either can be the beginning if we just switch the frame. So once we know where you want to end up, all we need to do is start working backwards to get you there. So let's say you want to make $1 million in the next 12 months. Again, anything's possible. My old boss used to say, all things are possible. They just take time and money. So I would never dare tell you you can't do that in a year. I've met people who've done that in a year and much more in a year, their first year in business, which is crazy. But again, not the typical case. But if you want to make $1 million and you have $0 right now, well, we need to figure out how much we're going to charge for our product, who could pay for that amount of product, and how many conversations we need to start in order to get to that particular amount of conversations that are going to help us get to that number. Now, I've just opened up another can of worms for you here because what we've covered today is swatting your squats. But you'll notice that we didn't cover actions or tactics. So what I've just opened up is the actions part of thing, where we're going to start talking about how you can actually start to do this work. Once you've got your strategy going, how are you going to build out your action plan to achieve that coveted $1 million number or whatever number or goal it is that you have? So stay tuned for our next session where we're going to cover the actions part of the SQUAT framework that I've created for this program here at Grad Prep. I'm Steven Steers signing off for now. I wish you an awesome, awesome day and an even better week. I'll see you soon. Take care.